So if nothing else, Nebraska's new players will get used to playing in front of a packed house as Nebraska has sold out its spring game. All excited about the Scott Frost era beginning in a very short time. We bring in Parker Gabriel. You can join him on Husker Extra with the very best in Nebraska football coverage. All right, Parker, let's get down to it. Have wanted to get you on here since National Signing Day. Of course, we talked recruiting after the early signing period and the inroads that Frost and his staff has made, even with a late jump on things, staying with the Central Florida program through the bowl game. Now that we get through the complete class, just your thoughts about it. I know that there was the one miss on signing day with Javonte Jean-Baptiste signing with Ohio State, but overall your thoughts about the class.
They took a lot of wide receivers, a lot of offensive skill position, and defensive backs as strongest for the biggest needs. But he said more than anything, with the short amount of time they had, they were just recruiting the best players they could find, that they had a realistic shot of landing in 2 months. And I think that it marries in, though, with need, because it's a lot easier to sell a kid like, hey, we have 5 scholarship wide receivers on the roster, so do the math. Like, you'll be in the running for playing time just by the numbers. They did miss on Javonte Jean-Baptiste, who we talked about last time, Mark. But they landed a 4-star outside linebacker, Caleb Tanner, from Georgia, who was committed to Georgia until November. Auburn and Florida were after him late. Florida made a strong push, but Nebraska came away with that. So they lost out on one athletic pass rushing type player that they really liked, but they landed another that until beginning of signing week, or maybe late the week before, it seemed like maybe they were not going to be able to get in on. So that was a big win. They wind up with 24 signees, classes ranked in the top 25, both in 24/7 Sports and Rivals, which is that's pretty heavy lifting for a staff that was only in place for 66 days before signing day.
It's heavy lifting in a short period of time. It's also an upgrade over what we've seen in recent years, not significantly because Mike Riley had recruited well, but certainly if you compare the recruiting rankings to the on-field product, aside from winning what I would think was an overvalued 9 games a couple of years ago, obviously Mike Riley underachieved the other 2 seasons. And this, if you look at the ranking versus the product on the field, the 4th rated class in the Big Ten, this is not the 4th best team in the Big Ten. So that's an upgrade, number 22 nationally. So anybody under the radar, anybody that you've looked at on video, or you can talk about the stars of the class. I'll let you go in either direction, but anybody who jumps out to you.
Well, I think Miles Jones, who's sort of an all-purpose back. I think Rivals had him as a 4-star, 3-star on 24/7 Sports. So he's not exactly an under-the-radar prospect. He averaged 10 yards a carry for American Heritage School in Florida, powerhouse program. Patrick Surtain is the head coach there. His son, Patrick Surtain Jr., going to Alabama, 5-star kid. So, star-studded team as far as high schools go. But Miles Jones, when Scott Frost, everyone talks glowingly about their class on signing day, and Frost was no different. But he when he talked about Miles Jones, he talked about guys like him that they've had at Oregon and UCF, and it's names like DeAnthony Thomas and Kenjon Barner, and at Oregon, and then Otis Anderson, who was just a freshman at UCF last year, who had a great year. So I think that was one of those kind of the Swiss Army knife type player. Guy who they're going to line up all over the field. And he's a guy who, Nebraska doesn't really have a guy like that on their roster. Maybe J.D. Spielman, maybe Tyjon Lindsey, but those guys are going to be counted on as sort of true wide receivers more. And so I think that's a guy who, he might not be considered the crown jewel of the class, but just given the offense that Scott Frost is bringing to Nebraska and what Miles Jones can do, he's a guy that seems like he could have an instant impact because he's used to playing in that sort of multi-purpose role.
We've got Parker Gabriel on the line from Husker Extra. Please join him right there for the very best in Nebraska football coverage, running down the 2018 signing class. Of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel where I bring on bloggers, writers, broadcasters like Parker each and every day to cover college football. For the smart fan, that would be you. So you can also catch the audio versions at Podbean, Stitcher, and iTunes. So I think you led me into the next question in regards to just Scott Frost looking for the best players wherever he could find them, considering the situation especially. Plus, that's not necessarily a bad way to go any year. Find the best players wherever you can find them. There doesn't seem to be a footprint to this. It's not like 70% of the class is from the heartland and then a few stragglers from Texas and Florida to pick up some speed, anything like that. So it looks like to be scattered all over the place. Do you expect that to change or for Scott Frost based on maybe him leaking his thoughts a little bit in terms of what he would think the strategy needs to be going forward?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see that they're always going to need to get skill from Florida, Texas, California, and they did that in this class, and they'll continue to do that. They'll probably try to get in on sort of the next level up of guys, I would think, in each of those states with a full cycle and full cycles going forward to recruit to. But I think it's interesting, there's a couple of mid to, solid to high 4-star guys in Omaha in the 2019 class that are going to be really highly recruited. There's a highly thought of quarterback, Max Duggan, who's just across the river in Council Bluffs for 2019, Council Bluffs, Iowa. They've already got 2 guys committed, scholarship guys from the state of Nebraska for 2019. And then zooming out a little bit further, there's an awful lot of talent in St. Louis, especially, and Kansas City, which are both in a 300-mile or so radius. Kansas City even closer than that to Lincoln. And so I think you'll see a heavy emphasis in Florida, heavy emphasis in Texas and California, and they'll go to the East Coast or to Ohio or wherever, Pennsylvania, wherever there's talent to get, to sort of spot recruit. But I do think you could see the backbone of the 2019 class, especially, be from a relatively close radius and then go obviously elsewhere to for players they really like and to fill out the class with the, from the main population centers. They're also going to try to be in Georgia. They got Caleb Tanner from there. They've got a linebacker on the roster, Mohamed Berry, from there. And they've got a transfer from Ole Miss, Breon Dixon, who also is from Georgia. And so they have a nice little starting point of Georgia players, and they'd like to compete. They've made it clear they're not afraid to swing away with the SEC powers in the South. And so I think you'll see them try to keep a presence in Georgia too.